We are back on Inside Politics. Our guest today is David Plazas. He's the opinion and engagement editor at the Tennessean and also with the USA Today Tennessee Network. David, Tennessee Congressman Steve Cohen from Memphis this week was one of those introducing articles of impeachment against President Trump. Is the Tennessean, is that something you're likely to take an editorial stand about, and is this the time to have that kind of discussion, or is it still way too early?
I think it's premature right now. We're certainly having conversations among our editorial board members, but right now impeachment, especially for a Democrat, is a political tool at this time. You need a majority of the House of Representatives to actually have this trial, and the fact is, it's at this moment it's not going to happen. Most likely we'll see, unless something scandalous happens, unless Bob Mueller's investigation comes back and shows something that's really, really off kilter, we're going to see President Trump probably serve through his 4 years.
The White House keeps saying that they think the Mueller probe is in the wind-down stage. Is that the way you see it? There have been a couple of indictments and then one guilty plea put in. Do you think there'll be more of the same? Is that coming on? It looks like, is this going to be a long-term situation where this investigation is going to go on for a while?
I think it's going to be a long-term situation. For those who remember the Clinton administration and the Ken Starr probe, that took many, many years, and that was related to an issue of infidelity. This is related to an issue of national security. And what I've heard and what I've been reading has been, you know, what's next in terms of, for example, Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor, and his son. So I think there's a lot of things that haven't been processed yet. I think this is going to be a long time coming.
In Washington this week, the focus was on the tax bill that got through the House. I'm not sure whether it's going to get through the Senate or not. Already there's one senator who said, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, says he's not going to support the bill, usually for reasons that seem to be somewhat unique to his own situations. But that puts it down to one or two senators on the Republican side. If they decide not to vote for it, the bill won't pass. And right now, we don't quite know where Bob Corker is going to be. Senator Alexander says he's for it, but this could make Bob Corker again a front and center on this whole thing and make his vote critical.
Absolutely, and there's been a big advertising campaign trying to get Bob Corker to address his earlier comments about deficits, because Bob Corker said if it adds 1 penny to the deficit, he's not going to be for it. And right now, the analysis that we're seeing is that, in fact, it's going to blow.
I haven't seen a tax plan come up there that doesn't somewhat add at least some money to that. So where do you think this, you've had some conversations with the senator over the last several weeks, where do you think he is on that? Because if at this point he said no, it would take Vice President Pence's tie-breaking vote to have any chance. And of course, that doesn't speak to the others who may or may not decide to vote for it.
Well, he's very much a deficit hawk, and I think he's very consistent too. So if he said what he said, I suspect that he'll follow through on that. And if he wants to have some variation, I'm sure that he'll address that as well.
What are your thoughts about the Senate bill, which becomes the one that's in play now? If they do both pass situations, I'll have to go into conference, but they've added the thing to get rid of the individual mandate, and once again the health care issue comes up again. Do you think that's a wise thing for the Republicans to bring back up again?
I think it muddles the issue very much, and what it does, it achieves a political aim at the expense of a lot of people. We have here tremendous poor health outcomes in the state of Tennessee. We've got an issue where we've got hundreds of thousands of people who don't have access to health insurance, and essentially this is just going to worsen the situation. You'd mentioned Metro General Hospital before, Nashville General Hospital before, and the reality is that's one of nearly 10 hospitals that have closed in some fashion. And a lot of it is because of the lack of proper, wise investments such as Medicaid expansion into the state. This is just going to worsen that situation. If they're going to pass a tax reform bill, let it be a tax reform bill and not a health care bill.
The big issue in Washington this week actually was centered in Alabama. That's the special election down there. Roy Moore, the former Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, twice removed from there, seems to have been a pretty heavy favorite when he won the primary, but with these sexual impropriety things have come up with him, particularly involving teenagers. Do you think that race is now in play for the Democrats?
What I've seen in terms of polling is that it is, but we remember from polling last year in the presidential election, we may not know completely. What we've heard is that the Alabama Republican Party is behind him. He certainly has that kind of support. There have been voters who have been interviewed.
And the governor's not going to remove his nomination or change the election?
Correct. And actually, I believe at this point his name can't be removed. But he could certainly choose to step aside. We've heard also about the fact that once he's in the Senate, will there be steps taken to try to remove him in some fashion? That'll be pretty difficult. It'll be one of those things where, you know, you're seeing also now a sexual scandal and propriety scandal with Al Franken, senator from Minnesota, and having a real discussion about the issues of sexual assault and sexual harassment. With Roy Moore, he certainly is a problematic candidate for sure, and he is not facing up to the allegations that have been made against him.
I'm not sure that two guys are the people that have a conversation about what's been going on in the country, but there does seem to be a change in how these things have happened. Not that there are more or less sexual problems going on with people having harassment things happen to them, but it seems like it's coming more and more to the forefront, and women and others are no longer afraid to bring it up, even if it happened some years ago. What is that, a societal change, and where is it coming from?
I would think so, and I think it's a good societal change because people aren't afraid to talk about these things, because you know, that whole kindergarten mantra of treat others as you'd like to be treated. There are people in power who have not behaved in that way. They've behaved in ways to really marginalize people and to silence them. And it's good that people speak up. And obviously we want to make sure that these are truthful claims, but in many cases they are. And it's important to listen, because people in power are prone to be susceptible to being corrupted this way.
So you look like you think this is going to continue to be a major issue, and there are going to be yet more things coming out about this on an ongoing basis.
I would suspect we've already seen a lot of articles talking about bringing back up President Bill Clinton and his legacy, and whether or not he should remove himself. There have been a lot of reminders from Vox and from USA Today as well that he was asked to resign, but there was no real big push by Democrats to do that. And so that whole question of whataboutism and hypocrisy is coming up with all those, and they have to, all these candidates have to face that. And it's important now that women are talking about the issue in Congress. Now we saw our own scandal here in the state legislature with Jeremy Durham, the former representative, last year.
Yeah, ours came about a year or so early.
But for 9 months or so, there was nothing. It was almost like, well, there's nothing to see here. And finally, he was expelled. But it took a long time to finally get to a point where people could say these women felt comfortable enough to talk about what had happened to them.
David Plazas is our guest. He's the opinion and engagement editor at the Tennessean. Back to continue our conversation after these messages.